Good evening and welcome to Conversations Live, Get Your Garden On. I'm Patty Satalia. After a long winter, we all love to welcome spring, but it also arrives with lots of chores for gardeners. Tonight, our experts will provide tips to help you get off to a good start. They'll also take your questions. Our toll-free number is 1-800-543-8242, and our email address is connect@wpsu.org. You can also join us on Twitter. Find us under the address @WPSU and use the hashtag WPSU Conversations. Now let's meet our guests. Tom Butzler is a Penn State Extension horticulture educator. He works with commercial horticulture operations and the landscaping community and is based in Clinton County. His area of expertise is vegetable production and beekeeping. John Esslinger is a county-based extension educator with Penn State. He works with fruit and vegetable growers and in greenhouse production. Thank you both so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you, Patty.
Spring planting seems to be 2 to 3 weeks behind schedule throughout our coverage area. That being the case, what should our top priorities be, whether we're growing vegetables or flowers, Tom?
Yeah, everything is behind. It was a long, cold winter, of course. Everyone's kind of recovering from that. I think be patient. I live in the little town of Jersey Shore. Our frost-free date's around May 20th, and so you can kind of ballpark that on when you want to plant some of the things in the garden. I think our commercial growers are a little behind getting into the field, but I think our home gardeners will be right on track with this weather that's going to be coming up in the next week or two.
So, John, will a couple of warmer than normal days, as Tom says, get us back on schedule, on track?
Patty, it'll help a lot. The thing that we have to realize, sometimes the soil is still really cold. And so once the soil starts to warm up, then things will start to catch up. And we might be behind a little bit, but we'll catch up a lot if we can get some nice warm weather.
Okay, I think I'm going to say this based on what I've done, which was a mistake, and that was to too hastily pull something out of my landscape because it turned brown. I had 2 boxwoods that looked like they were goners, and I found out later that was frost damage, and that's happened to a lot of plants in our landscapes.
I think we've gotten used to some more mild winters and not used to seeing some of the damage that can occur on some of our boxwoods and rhododendrons, things that are green during the winter months. And this winter was really, really cold, windy, and it was pretty rough on some of our plants. Just like to show you this sample here. This is a Leyland cypress, and this is what it should look like, nice and green. But this is what happened in some plantings that were exposed to some winter winds, and you get this browning of the foliage, and the tips of them are dead. They'll snap right off. But for a lot of these broadleaf evergreens and conifers, needles, you need to wait a little bit and see what will live, and then just prune accordingly. You may have to prune back a little bit to where that brown interfaces with the green and just remove that brown portion.
And of course, cypress are tall. This isn't going to be easy to prune.
Yeah, no, it won't be. On some of those tall shrubs, then you're going to just have to let nature take its course probably. Some of that older stuff will fall off, and it'll take about maybe a year to catch up and look appropriate in the landscape again.
Okay. All right, we go to our first phone call. This is Marlene calling us from Clearfield. Go ahead, please, Marlene.
Thank you, Patty, for taking my call. Thank you for taking my call.
You are welcome. Go ahead.
I have, well, I think maybe he answered my question on pruning a rhododendron. Just how do you go about pruning that winter damage on a rhododendron? And I also have another question about a gray fungus mold on a cherry tree and a dogwood tree. Is that a sign of its decay, or can I treat it?
Let's start with Tom, and we're going to go to John, who can answer the fruit tree question.
Okay, so your question was on the rhododendron
and pruning
and pruning and the concerns with winter injury. And really, you just need to find out where that the dead portion, where it has died, and it kind of interfaces or intersects with the still living portion of that rhododendron, and then prune appropriately. It depends on where you live in Pennsylvania. It may take another week or 2 to find out that area where that occurs, where that living portion is still okay. But yeah, just prune it out, it'll be fine. Most of our plants can handle some winter injury. They're not going to die off, so they can withstand some damage.
Okay,
they'll bounce back.
And the second part of the question, John?
she mentioned there was like a gray mold on the side of the bark, and typically that's like a lichen, and that's natural. It's not hurting the tree at all. If it makes you feel any better, in my own little orchard at home, I have some of that growing on my trees, and that's just normal. That's not a sign that the tree's in trouble.
Okay, and we are going to talk a little bit about fruit trees in a minute, but first I'll take this phone call from Jim in Johnstown. Go ahead, please, Jim.
Yes, sir. I always get a ton of buds on my apple tree. And
Buds.
Then I get a lot of little apples, but about mid-June, all the little apples fall off. And I have two trees within about 6 feet of each other. And I was just wondering if there's anything I can do. This has been going on for about 10, 12 years. Any help would be appreciated.
All right, thank you for your call. John?
I do have a question for you. What are your varieties?
Oh, geez, I mean, I don't remember. I think one's a yellow, the golden apple.
Is it Matsu?
Yes, sir.
Well, that's the problem. Matsu, the pollen on Matsu is sterile, and so it's not going to work as a pollinator. What you need to do is get another variety. Probably even like a Golden Delicious would work well.
And just add it to
Yes.
this. He doesn't have to take that tree out.
No, that
Just needs some help.
It's a pollination issue, and there are a few varieties that have Matsu. The popular ones would be Matsu. Can't think of them right now, but
Did I ask one more question?
yeah.
Sure, go ahead.
They were supposed to be dwarf trees, and they're grown very large. I've cut them back quite a few times.
Okay, a dwarf tree will stay a dwarf if you make sure that when you plant it, you keep the graft out of the soil. If the graft, anything above the graft has opportunity to touch the soil, it will root and it'll then become a standard tree that's no longer a dwarf.
Interesting. All right. Well,
Yeah.
thank you and good luck to you, Jim. We go to Sharon, who is calling us from State College. Go ahead, please, Sharon.
Yes, hi. Thank you for taking my call. I have a fairly small garden, and I plant tomatoes. And I've been told you should rotate or not plant tomatoes in the same location several years in a row. And I was wondering if there are any options that I might have.
Well, this is true. Explain why, Tom.
Yeah, the idea is that you rotate your crops around because there are certain diseases that can kind of build up in the soil and then impact the plants that you're growing, the vegetable plants you're growing. So it is recommended that you rotate around.
So she has a small garden. Could she switch to some container gardening this year and next year go back to planting?
That would be a great option. I mean, they do sell tomatoes that perform really well in these containers. You can put them on the patio or the porch. So yeah, that's an alternative. And then go into that small garden plot with something else. Now, it wouldn't be a pepper, something that would be totally unrelated to tomatoes. Maybe your beans, cucumbers, things like that.
And when you do plant tomatoes in a container, you can actually look at your garden store for plants that were bred specifically to be grown in
right.
pots.
Yeah, you're going to want some tomatoes that are appropriate for that location. I mean, some tomato plants grow really large in the garden. That's not going to be appropriate for a patio or a porch.
Okay, hope that helps, Sharon. We go to Kate, who is calling us from State College. You're on the air, Kate.
Hi, I'd like to ask about two questions about grass. First, about ornamental grass. The ones that they promote to use for ornamental grass in your garden, are they all imported grasses? Are there any of them that are native North American grasses, or are they all imported?
No.
Go ahead.
There are a bunch of native ornamental grasses, and I guess, Kate, the question I have for you, they're recommending to plant them in the garden, and I guess for what reason?
No, just like any ornamental grass you'd see in a garden center in a flower pot to plant. I was in the South, and they used pampas grass down there.
Sure.
And it had escaped all over the place.
Sure.
And my impression was that pampas grass meant it was from South America, and I thought we were sure more supposed to plant native things?
Yeah, there are a lot of good ornamental grasses out there, natives. Carl Forster's the big one that a lot of people are using. But yeah, there are a lot of good natives, but there are some that are not native to the United States, and they have some ornamental characteristics that people like. You do have to be careful about some of the...
And spreading is a problem.
Yeah, you have to be careful, just not with ornamental grasses, but there are some woody ornamentals that people like in their landscape, but sometimes they tend to get a little wild, and you see them out in the forest setting and the wild setting. So you do need to be somewhat careful with that.
Okay, thank you for your call. Jackie from Altoona, you're on the air.
Hi, I have 4 different kinds of bamboo in my yard. 2 of them are shrub, and the other 2 are the high kind, and they really got hit with the frost and the freezes in the winter. They basically look dead. I figured I should just cut down the shrub bamboo to the ground and see what happens to it. But what about the tall ones? They're 6, 7 feet high, deader than a doornail. Should I cut them off too?
Yeah, you know, I personally don't have a lot of experience with bamboos. I don't have them on my landscape, and I don't work with a lot of landscapers that utilize them in their designs. I guess, you know, a lot of that growth is coming up from the bottom. So if you don't see any growth here once it warms up, then cutting them down at the soil line would be fine, and they'll regenerate.
All right, thank you for your call. We'll go to Jay in just a moment, but I wanted to talk with John for a moment about some of the things you're seeing in fruit trees this year because of that hard winter.
Okay, yeah, just a couple things I did want to show. First we'll talk a little bit about the peach crop. The stone fruit seem to have been hurt by the winter a little more than say, the pone fruit like apples and pears. I've got some samples here. You can see the buds that didn't grow at all, those were buds that actually started to grow. They swelled up late in the winter, but because of the cold weather, they never developed at all. The other buds where you can see the end actually flowered, but that because of the winter damage, the tissue that was to support that flower was damaged, and so the flower couldn't survive.
So it never produced any fruit, and that tree
it's not going to.
Yeah.
So the bottom line is that we're going to have, especially areas, seems like Route 80 was kind of the line. North of Route 80, the peach crop is going to be on the light side. South of Route 80, I think the peach crop is going to be pretty average.
Okay, and you also brought a sample from a cherry tree, and it sounds like cherry tree growers are in the same boat, or if you have one in your landscape at home.
Cherry trees are actually in worse shape. Cherries bloom a little quicker than the peaches do, and so because they started a little bit sooner, they were damaged a little bit more. You know, on this sample that I have, there's some buds here that should have produced flowers but never produced any.
One flower on that whole stem.
And it's not uncommon to go into an orchard and see lots of flowers were there, but they're not going to make any fruit. So the peach crop has been ruined here in most of Pennsylvania.
Okay, there's good news here, and apples have done okay.
The apples are tough, and they took the winter, and I can tell you, working with commercial growers, they're concerned about having too many apples on the tree. And so they came through the winter fine. The pollination is actually going on right now, and it looks like we're going to be in good shape. And so it's kind of wait and see, but it looks like we're going to have a good apple crop.
Okay, and if they have too many apples on the tree, what pruning recommendations would you have?
They need to thin them, and the sooner you thin them, the better. But typically we say 8 inches, so the width of your hand, and should have 1 apple every 8 inches. And there's several reasons for that. One is if you keep the crop load light, then next year the tree will flower and produce again next year. If you leave too many on this year, the tree will know.
It's pooped out for next year.
It is, yeah, and it just takes next year as a vacation.
Okay, all right. We go to Jay, who is calling us from Altoona. Go ahead, please, Jay. Is Jay there? Hi, Jay, are you with us? We'll come back to Jay. In the meantime, we got an email from someone, Tom, and I have this exact same problem.
Hello?
Oh, are you there, Jay?
Yes.
Hi. Do you have a question for us?
Yeah, so maybe it's not really... Hello?
Hello?
Yeah, my question is about the hemlock trees. I heard that, you know, they're infected with a bug called the woolly Adelaide or something like that. And I was just
Elgin.
wondering if they're working on anything to maybe try to salvage them or not.
Okay, Tom?
Yeah, it's the hemlock woolly adelgid.
Adelgid.
Yeah, there's a lot of research going on with that. They're bringing in some insects into the area to see, will that work?
I'm afraid of the unintended consequences there.
Well,
but-
I mean, they have some regulations in place. I mean,
Okay.
they're bringing in some of these lady beetles.
that bite, by the way?
No.
Okay.
These are really small.
Okay, last year-
They're trying to do some releases with those to see if they control the population. There are, of course, some insecticides that you can use, some safer approaches. But it's kind of a tough battle, and as of right now, there's not any surefire control measure. So it's kind of a, well, let's see what happens.
And what percentage of our state tree have we lost, would you say, as a result of that insect?
You know, I go kayaking, canoeing up and down Pine Creek, and as of right now, the hemlocks that I see, they're infested, but not too many of them have died yet. But if this infestation occurs year after year, we are going to see a big loss in hemlocks in the near future.
Okay. All right, Judy from Newry, you're on the air.
Hi. I have a question about lilac bushes. My bushes are approximately 20 years old. They've always flowered very well. Last year we had a late frost and they were ready to bloom. They all died off, and now this year I only have a couple blooms on them. Is it because of the frost last year, or what do you think happened?
I don't think that should be a problem because of last year's frost. It may have been some winter damage
I think
on
it's
that.
winter damage this year.
This year,
Mine
okay.
look the same way.
Yeah.
And it's consistent across the whole landscape. I mean, the winter temperatures hurt things.
And is there anything to do to help compensate for a rough winter? For example, extra fertilizing or pruning? So just wait and see, wait for next year. Just be
Yeah.
acknowledge that this year is not going to be, it's not going to be as pretty a plant.
Yeah, we had unusual temperatures this year, and just hope we don't have that again this next winter. But if we have a normal winter, you'll see things looking back to normal.
Yep.
Okay. Barry from Emporium, what's your question for our guest, please?
Yes, I have a question on peach tree. Last year it was very well, lots of peaches on it, and I didn't get the limb propped up in time, and it split off the side of the tree, and I ended up taking that branch off altogether because it died, and I put a wrap on there on the tree, and it's been on for a year now, and I was wondering if I can take that off and if that has scabbed over and it's safe to leave that way.
John?
Yes, I would definitely remove that. Sometimes if you leave something like that on too long, you'll get some insects living underneath there and causing damage. And yeah, Barry, just to be a good idea to get that off, let the tree kind of compensate. I'll go back to something earlier you said is you didn't get the tree propped up. I mentioned about thinning apples. We really should thin peaches also. It's probably more important on peaches that you get them thinned. Again, you want about 1 peach every 8 inches. And so thin them off so that the tree can hold itself up and you're not going to have that breakage.
And if you do that thinning that you're saying, is your fruit probably going to be tastier as a result?
It'll taste better.
Okay.
It'll be much larger. It'll be more attractive. It's
So there's the
better all
incentive
way
in
around.
thinning.
It's hard to do it in the spring when you see all those beautiful little peaches that you're throwing on the ground. Yeah. But you got to do it. You do it and you will be pleased with the results.
All right, good tip. Mary from Boalsburg, you're on the air.
Hi, I bought a peach, a sweet cherry, and a plum from the Conservation District in Center County. They were bare root. They've been in the soil for about 3 weeks. Only one is budding out. Should I worry about the other two?
John?
No, I wouldn't worry yet. It's been cold. We've had some cold nights. It is just now starting to warm up at night, and so, yeah, give them a couple more weeks. Yeah. It's important to keep them watered. I think that's probably the most critical thing you can do for them right now. Don't push fertilizer to them, but just keep them watered.
But how about the hole she dug? What should she have done in terms of planting those bare-rooted trees?
Again, it depends on how the tree was handled even before she got it. But assuming that they were, freshly dug
They came in
tree.
plastic bags from the conservation district. They were kept damp until they were
Good.
planted. There was a large hole, and I, did a mix of peat moss and so on. I did not put fertilizer in the hole. Spread out the roots. Is that what I should have done?
Yes. Yeah. I don't know that you needed to put the peat moss in, but it's not going to hurt anything.
Okay.
But just spreading the roots out and watering it in well so that you're kind of washing that soil in against those roots so there's no air pockets.
Mary, just to make you feel good, I just planted some bare root peach trees about a week ago. And I looked at the peach trees about 2 days ago, and the buds look plump. They haven't leafed out yet. So I think, like John said, I think just hold tight a little bit. Everything should be fine as long as those roots were taken care of and remained moist. So you should be okay.
All right. Good luck to you, Mary. Dorothy.
Can I ask one more question?
Oh, sure. Go ahead.
This is this is a house that I bought last year, and I guess these Euonymus, the variegated Euonymus, seem to have taken a major hit this winter, and they're starting to bud out again. Should I prune them or just wait and see what happens?
I think it's just like we talked about earlier. Just wait and see what happens. See what is living, what is dead, and then in a couple of weeks when everything is completely, leafed out, go ahead and with the pruners and go to work.
Okay. All right. We go to Dorothy from Port City. You're on the air, Dorothy.
Yes, hello. Thank you for taking my call. I have a question to the fellows there about English ivy. I have English ivy as a ground cover under some pine trees and also different areas, and it is completely frozen. Do you suppose it's going to come back, or is this going to have to be all pulled up? Thank you.
Thank you for your call.
Dorothy, you still there?
Oh,
Yes.
Okay, when you say completely frozen, what do you mean by that?
Well, it's all brown.
Okay.
Completely brown, and I thought I'd get some growth eventually. Other areas in our community, this is Armstrong County.
Sure.
Also on banks and things, they have ivy planted as a ground cover, and it is all brown and dry. So it's not just my place, it's several places.
Okay, yep, it was a hard winter. I guess, have you gone up to the English ivy, kind of pushed around or aside some of the brown foliage, the stuff that has died out over the winter? Can you?
No, I haven't.
Okay.
I just have kind of left it to see, as you say, just kind of leave it and see what's going to develop.
Yep, I would still wait. English ivy's pretty hardy, and I suspect that you're going to get some regrowth there underneath those browned out leaves, and you'll be fine. I don't think you're going to have to pull anything out. It just looks bad right now, and it's just something you're going to have to sit tight. I know, you want everything to look aesthetically pleasing, but at this point right now, I just accept the brown for a while, and you'll be all right. You should be all right.
All right. Thanks for your call.
Can I have one more question to him?
Sure.
I was surprisingly, some of my things that I thought were going to freeze, like I had a redbud tree that's generally a southern person plant, and it was bloomed and completely nice. But then other things like this ivy, and one other thing that I wanted to ask about is Montana Rubens Clematis. Is it going to come back? It's completely dry.
I don't know about the Clematis. That's something, again, a wait-and-see approach. But it is interesting. Plants are really hardy. Most of them can pull through. The problem I think you're seeing, everyone's talking about this damage. What are they seeing it on? They're seeing it on broadleaf evergreens, boxwoods, English ivy, rhododendrons, things that are green throughout the winter months. And so that wind just whips across that leaf surface. It draws out the moisture and those leaves turn brown. And same thing with the conifers. Some of these needles, they dry out.
And you have a good example right here.
Well,
that's actually an insect problem.
Yeah, that's an insect,
okay.
right. So, a lot of our deciduous trees, you saw it John talk about some damage with the flower buds, but other than that, very little damage. But it's mostly our broadleaf evergreens and some of our needles, things that just have that green surface, and they get.
So be patient.
Yep.
and hope for the best.
I thank you so much for taking my call.
You're welcome. Thank you for calling. We go to Sally, who is calling us from Lamont. You're on the air, Sally.
Hello. Thank you for taking my call. I have a question about a rose bush that I purchased. And right now, I'm not seeing any leaves or any buds, and so I'm not sure what's going on with the plant. I was fertilizing it for a while, and then just kind of just went to regular watering it, and I'm not getting anything. Should I take it out of the pot and plant it into the ground, or is it too early?
Oh, so you purchased it this year in a pot? And
I did.
And it's in your house?
No, I purchased it bare root, and I repotted it into a pot with vermiculite and peat moss, and then I started putting some type of like fertilizer, and I bought like 5 or 6 roses, a different variety. This one was a Camelot rose, and for some reason the Camelot rose is not producing any leaves or any buds, but it still has like green vines, so I don't know what's going on with that.
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly what's going on with that either, but a lot of times, you mentioned you have a bare root plant?
That's what she started with.
Yeah, okay. So a lot of these bare root plants, fruit trees or ornamentals, I mean, they're kept in cold storage, and so they're coming out of this cold storage, they're very dormant, and it may be just delayed dormancy. So putting them out there in the environment, wherever you're going to eventually place this in the landscape, get it acclimated, and you should get some bud growth there.
But if you're putting these outside, we've had some extreme temperatures. We've gone from 50 degrees to 85 degrees in one day.
Right.
So
I think
that's probably fairly stressful.
I think for the dormant plants it would be okay, but some calls have come into the office of people doing vegetable transplants, start them in the house and then bring them outside into this sunny weather, and what happens when they're exposed to the sun?
Yeah, they're not
burned.
Yeah, they're not conditioned, but they're in leaf. And so, yeah, there you do need to kind of slowly get them used to that outside environment. With some of these bare root plants, that's not so much an issue.
So when you first bring a plant like this outside, do you want to put them in a shady area for a day and then move them gradually into the sun?
You're talking about like vegetables?
Anything, flowers or vegetables.
Yes. When you're talking about a vegetable, you want to do it. Think of yourself getting a suntan. Okay, you don't want to go out for 12 hours. You want to just an hour or two and then come back inside and just gradually get them used to it. Give yourself a week to acclimate those plants. The situation with this rose, it hasn't budded out yet, so that's not the issue. I would try to keep it in a fairly warm place. The fact that the stem is still green on it, I would still have hope that it's going to still try and come. So I would not give up on it yet. Try and keep it warm and be patient.
Okay. All right, we go to Tom, who is calling us from Punxsutawney. Tom, you're on the air.
Hey, thanks. I've got another peach question. Since our fruit buds this year kind of froze out, is there anything we can do pruning-wise to, make sure we get some new bud growth for the coming year, for peaches next year? And another insect question. Do they have any natural controls for the spotted wing Drosophila fly, a fruit fly?
We'll start with you, John.
Okay. What you can expect is if you have no peach crop on it, then the peach tree is going to put that energy into growth, and maybe a little bit of an excessive growth. Probably I would not do anything different with it this year, but what you're going to have to be is prepared next spring when you do your pruning. And typically we recommend like the latter half of April is the ideal time to prune peaches. When you do that pruning, you're going to be a little bit more aggressive. Just because the tree didn't have a crop this year, it's set up to have a really big crop next year then. And so you need to prune it back a little bit harder, not a lot harder, but just a little bit harder. And so that way you'll have a nice balanced tree, and yeah, the ideal thing for a tree is to produce every year. And when it doesn't, then that energy's got to go someplace.
All right. And the insect part of his question, Tom?
The spotted wing Drosophila. Yeah, that one's going to be an interesting one, John, because of this winter that we had. I think that it's really going to be beat back this year because of the cold winter. I think.
I would. That's my thought too. Now we're speculating here.
We are speculating.
Yeah.
Insects kind of have a mind of their own too. But you know, it's been a problem the past couple years. It's a problem on small fruits, blueberries, your fall-bearing raspberries, and the female lays her eggs in this fruit, and then it hatches out just about the time when everything's getting ripe. It's on the customer's counter, and you got these little maggots crawling around on the fruit that you're about to eat, and it really turns a lot of people off. Although it's good protein, though. So.
What can people do about them, though, to get rid of them?
And that's a tough one. He mentioned, is there anything organically that can be done? There are a couple organic products. I think Biganic is one that is labeled for use.
Spinosad works also.
Okay, Spinosad. So there are a couple approaches. The effectiveness, I'm not sure how effective they are. But as of right now, there are some chemicals that you can use, and some natural ones, as John mentioned.
Okay. If you're just joining us, I'm Patty Satalia, and this is Conversations Live. Get your garden on WPSU TV, WPSU FM in Central Pennsylvania, and on WQLN TV in Erie. Our guests tonight are Tom Butzler, a Penn State Extension horticulture educator, and John Esslinger, a county-based extension educator with Penn State. Our telephone number is 1-800-543-8242, and our panelists are ready to take your phone calls. If you'd prefer to email us, our address is connect@wpsu.org. You can also join us on Twitter. Find us under the address @WPSU and use the hashtag WPSU Conversations. And we go now to Jay, who is calling us from Tylersville. Go ahead, please, Jay.
It's
Kay. I'm sorry, Kay.
All right, hi.
Hi.
This is a question about my euonymuses. I have several varieties. Some of them crawl up the trees. They're all under pine trees. Some of them kind of crawl up the trees. Some of them are large bushes. But the ones I'm concerned about are 3 small upright ones that did not weather over this winter. All their leaves came off, and they've been there a couple of years. So is this normal behavior for the euonymus?
Well, Euonymus, she's talking about there's a couple deciduous Euonymus, but I think, okay, you're talking about these Euonymus, they have their leaves on all year round normally? Yeah, right.
That's right.
So they're these broadleaf evergreens again. And it could be that you had some dieback because of the severe winter we had. Just give you an example. I have a couple hollies in the landscape, and they are totally defoliated, but when I look at them up close, there are buds still there, and it's going to take a year or two for it to look like it did last year, but those buds are still there, they're living, and you're going to get new leaf growth on that. So again, I guess I could caution you that just maybe wait a little bit to see if you get some new growth there on that Euonymus where you had that severe leaf burn.
Okay. All right. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Well, speaking of evergreens, you have an example here that I think might be worth showing people. And this is the white pine weevil and the extensive damage it's done in the last year.
This right here is the terminal leader on a white pine. That's what it should look like right now. And there's a little weevil that is active right now that the female will lay her eggs in this terminal section, and by the middle of the summer, it will look like this. The eggs get in there, they hatch, and you have these larvae, little worms kind of running around up and down here, and they basically interfere with the vascular system, the plumbing system of this plant, and it dies. So if you have white pines in your yard and you can reach the terminal part of it, you need to look for those little insects there, the little weevils. They almost look the size of a tick that you find on the human body. They're pretty small. But
so if you just cut that off, you're protecting the rest of the tree?
Well, yeah. What you could do is if you see the weevils on, well, some growers, some landscapers, they'll put an insecticide on this terminal to protect it. You don't have to spray anything on the tree except the terminal part of it to control this white pine weevil. It only lays its eggs on the very top portion of the plant. It's kind of interesting why it does that. But the
hard to reach, that's why.
Well, yeah, once it gets too tall, you're not going to be climbing the tree to apply an insecticide. The other thing is, if this does happen, then you might want to train a new leader so you get a kind of a straight tree. What happens with a repeated infestation is the leader dies, it grows crooked, the leader dies, it grows crooked, and so you get kind of a unique plant in the landscape.
Okay. All right, we go now to Tyler, who is calling us from Jennerstown. What's your question, please? Is Tyler with us? Hi there.
Yes.
Go ahead, Tyler.
Okay, my question is, one year we were canning peaches, and we had thrown seeds out into the garden. The following year I noticed that the seeds were sprouting, and I went ahead and planted the seeds, and trees grew up off of them. And what happened is, as trees grew, they blossomed, but I didn't see much of the fruit coming off of them. Is this because of a certain strain of peach tree, or what's going on with that?
Did you understand all that, John?
Yeah, I think I got what he's saying. I'm not really sure I have a good answer for that. Those trees should produce flowers. They should produce fruit. Not sure. I'd like to have seen it in the landscape to see if there might be some shading or some other issues that caused it not to do well. But there's no reason why that tree won't produce fruit.
Okay. John from Huntington, you're on the air.
Thank you. My subject that I've heard about is holly bushes. Holly bush that's been, two of them that's been eaten by the deer. They've been 15, 20 years along the hillside where the whitetails can get at them. So they've been severely eaten. And the second, and I heard you talk about hollies, I hesitate to do heavy pruning because it's such a beautiful bush, and of course the one produces the berries, the red berries. Now the other subject is right near them. I have a native mountain laurel, probably as high as your shoulders, probably 5 feet high, and it also has been eaten or damaged, completely cleared off of leaves by the deer. And I'd like to ring off and hear what you answer I should do, both with the holly and, of course, with the mountain laurel.
A deer question. These are tough ones, John.
You touched on a nerve there. I've got some deer work in my property right now. I have some thoughts that I can't say on the air about that, but it's a tough situation. Sometimes some kind of netting, things that you can use to as barriers for the deer. The trees, the shrubs will come back. They will re-leaf the same as the winter damage. They'll come back from the deer damage. I can tell on my own property, I do not prune them very hard because there will be sprouts that'll come from different buds that are kind of laden in the tree that'll become active once that leaf is pruned off.
Can you put anything on the leaf that would be distasteful to a deer? I know there were some soap products.
But it's a full-time job because the rain washes it off. The deer have nothing else to do other than go after your stuff, and so you've got to be on it 24/7. It gets very, very frustrating.
Anything to add, Tom?
No, he hit upon it. Some of these things you can put up some smelling devices or smelling type things. I guess when you're dealing with some of these wildlife issues, you kind of need to mix it up too, because they can become used to the thing that you're putting out there.
Whether it's a strobe light, a
some
motion
sort of scare
detective.
tactic. They'll get used to that, and then they'll come in and browse. So you kind of have to change it up also, besides a 24/7 approach.
Okay.
I have damage in my orchard from the deer, and we had a nice lab, and the lab passed away, and then the deer started coming. And so, I mean, if you have a dog in the area, it may help just as a little bit of a deterrent. But
nothing too foolproof when it comes to deer.
It's a struggle.
John, so we go to Marty from Martinsburg. Are you there, Marty?
Yes, I am. I'd like to talk about peppermint, please.
Trees,
Hello?
peppermint trees? Yes, go ahead.
I'd like to talk about peppermint. I have a very small garden, but I really love to have some peppermint, but I don't want to put it in my herb garden because it just takes over. I tried a container, and it seems to pot bound and kill itself in the container. So how can I grow something like peppermint that grows very quickly and yet not have it take over?
Some tough questions
Yeah,
tonight.
that's a good one. That's a good one.
We have some peppermint in a container, and
you have no problem.
no, we don't. We've had it for about 4 or 5 years now, and it does seem to overwinter and does fairly well.
Could it be, Marty, that, I mean, when you say it kills itself, I mean, what happens?
It just seemed to become so pot bound, and that it just killed itself, and then it didn't come back the next year. And so I tried to take some of it out and replant it, but then it took over the herb garden. So then I had to pull it all out. And I'm trying to figure out how I can have peppermint because I love peppermint tea, and yet not have it take over my whole garden, which is not very large anyhow.
Right. Well, I'm not real familiar with peppermint, but if it's growing that aggressively, maybe it's something that you're growing in this pot that you divide on a regular basis. Maybe you divide it every 6 months so it doesn't get so root bound. I don't think it would get root bound that quick, though.
And maybe
just divide it. You're just saying like take half of it out and throw it away, and
then repot it back up. Exactly. I mean, that's something that you should do with houseplants periodically because they'll get root bound, and so we do encourage people that do a lot of houseplants and so forth that to repot things back up. You go a little larger pot, but with this herb, you can just divide it in half and then repot
and
it.
have
that
two
way.
pots.
Well, yeah, yeah.
Share it.
2 pots, and
Right.
then 4 pots, and then 24. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Good luck to you. Pete from Ridgeway, you're on the air. You there, Pete? We'll go to Ruth from Ebensburg. Are you there, Ruth?
Yes, I'm here.
Hi. What's your question?
I have ivy. You talked about English ivy a while ago, but the ivy is growing up the side of my house on the brick, and it also is all dead looking. And I wondered, do I have to cut that clear down to the ground and clean all that off the house, or will the vine itself get new growth on it?
What's brown that's up on the house isn't going to turn green, is it?
It still might.
It could?
It still
Okay.
might. I mean, English ivy being, these broadleaf evergreens we're talking about, and it's if it's up in an elevated position, it was subjected to probably a lot of winter winds. It's exposed as opposed to being on the ground where there's a little bit of protection. So they got burned pretty good. I would still wait. Now, after another couple weeks, if nothing green comes out, then yeah, you're going to have to prune that at the soil line.
And it's not easy to get it off a house.
Right, yeah. If no growth comes out of there after a couple weeks, then you know that everything that was elevated up there is dead, and it's just going to stay brown and just kind of look like an eyesore. So.
Well, I was hoping you wouldn't say that.
I'm still saying just give it a couple more weeks. I still think that you're going to see some vegetative growth there. English ivy is pretty tough to kill.
Yeah.
It's a hard plant.
And what Tom's saying is
this never happened before, but like you say, this was a different winter.
Yeah, it was. And what Tom's saying is don't expect it to all of a sudden be perfectly green, nice large leaves. In a couple weeks, just look for signs of new sprouts and new growth, and then it'll come back. Just give it time.
Well, we're going to have to clean off all the leaves.
Will they just drop?
I think they'll drop themselves.
Yep. That's a task that you don't need to do. They'll fall off naturally.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you for your call. Jim from Westfield, you're on the air.
Yes, I have a question concerning the thornless blackberries. I have 2 different varieties, and both of them seem to severely winter kill. Is it the northern part of Pennsylvania too harsh a winter for them? They come back and very aggressively, and when is the best time to prune them?
Okay, first of all, That does happen. On a cold winter, we will get dieback of those thornless varieties. I can tell you this, 20 years ago when I started an extension, they said the thornless varieties should only be planted in the southeast. But yeah, I myself took that as a challenge, and I planted them, and they're still growing. And so, I'm in the Bloomsburg area. But yeah, you can expect to see some dieback. Everybody has some dieback. I had a grower call me this morning about the dieback in their thornless blackberries. The time to prune them is now. You'll be able to see now the canes that produced last year and died over winter, which is normal. You're also able to see how far back they died. I can tell you I did my own about a week ago, and you'll see that, again, almost like the peaches I showed you, there were some sprouts that started this spring, but they then died back. And so you'll see now what's actively growing. So prune back to those actively growing shoots, and you'll be fine.
Which may mean your plant is only a couple of inches tall.
Mine, no. Mine actually, it was probably, if you take like a 6 foot long cane, it was probably about the last 2 to 3 feet were dying back. So I still had, 3 or 4 feet of good cane.
Okay, all right. We have an email question. This one from Claire. I trimmed my butterfly bush back this spring, and now it seems to be dead. Have I killed it by pruning it back too early? And I have to say, my butterfly bush hasn't done anything yet, but I'm optimistic that it is going to come back.
I'm with you. I've only been growing butterfly bush for 2 years now. Typically, I prune it back, and I did it about a month ago, and by now there's new shoots and it's growing. So I'm going to defer to Tom on this one. I'm not sure what's going on.
Oh, that was an email. Okay, and so prune back, and you see nothing coming up out of the ground. I would wait. I think butterfly bushes are pretty hardy too. In fact,
they get too big.
Yeah, they get too big, and they have the ability to really spread outside areas where we don't want them. So they're pretty hardy. I just think it's something you're going to have to wait for. I don't think they're going to be killed off. Now, one thing to kind of counteract some of this winter damage is to make sure that you do mulch in the fall. Mulching does protect the roots going into the winter. It's a couple degrees warmer under there. It tends to, you get some of these hard freezes, and it tends to kind of dampen those freezes a little bit. So, when we talk about maybe next winter, preparing for it, who knows what it's going to be like. One thing to kind of counter some of this potential damage is to mulch.
And let's talk about mulch for a moment. Is it necessary to remove the leaves before applying the mulch? And can you give us some tips between buying bag mulch and having someone deliver, a truckload of mulch?
Okay, bag mulch versus someone deliver. I think the big thing there is cost. I mean, you're buying a small quantity, and you're paying for kind of the convenience. When you get it delivered in bulk, you're getting a lot more mulch for the price. So mulch is mulch. There are some discrepancies there, but for the most part, you're using mulch to insulate that soil, and also to.
And so, can you put it over your leaves? There are some people who say just put the mulch right over the leaves, as long as it's not too thick of a.
Yeah, as long as it's not too thick.
Leaves.
I guess I'm a kind of a lazy gardener because.
So you do put the mulch right over.
I put the mulch right over the leaves.
Right.
I never would have thought of raking the leaves.
No. Yeah. That's just an added step. I got other things to do. So I just put the mulch on top of the leaves. It will decay. It's going to release its nutrients as it decays. That's a good thing.
Okay. All right. So we'll try and get these calls in here quickly. We've got Jerry from Bedford. What's your question, Jerry?
Yeah, the question is, other than a hemlock tree, could you give me like 2 trees that are really good for shady growth in a shady forest?
You're talking about an understory tree, Jerry. You want to?
It is a shady area that he wants to plant the tree.
Yeah, you can go with azaleas. You could go with what's that?
I'm looking for 2 different type of pines that can adapt and grow healthy.
In a shaded area?
Yes, exactly. Yep,
okay.
Yep.
Yeah, your choices are kind of limited there. When you're talking about pines, most of our pines. They're not really understory trees. You could go maybe kind of a part sunny area, but for something that's that shaded,
how about semi-shaded? What do you think? Not total shade, but give me something that could be halfway.
And you're looking for a tree.
Yeah, look, I'm thinking about planting some pine trees in a forest that's somewhat shaded, you know.
Yeah,
Not
off the
too
top of my head, I really can't think of any that are going to perform well in that situation. I mean, that might be, maybe some of your forestry folks might have a better handle on that, but as an understory tree that's going to perform in that kind of a situation.
Sounds like save your money on that one. Thank you, Jerry, for your phone call.
Yep, thank you.
Harry from Moshannon, you're on the air.
Yes, I recently bought a property, and
I think your TV is on, so if you turn the volume on your TV down, you'll be able to hear us better without that feedback.
Okay, fine, I'll do that. Yeah, and what it has is a number of old legacy apple trees, the full-size apple trees. Duchess, the Wealthy, and some early versions of Yellow Transparents. And they're pretty old and decrepit. They were planted probably after World War I. But I'm trying to rejuvenate them and bring them back. I've been pruning them, fertilizing them, and trying to encourage new wood growth. Can you suggest, am I on a fool's errand here, or what? Can you suggest some ways that I might be able to rejuvenate them?
All right, John?
Harry, you're fighting an uphill battle, and what concerns me is when you said you're rejuvenating them. So over the years, they've not been taken care of. They may have some fire blight in them, some issues that are going to limit the life of that tree. Assuming you don't have any of those issues, then what you're doing is the right thing, just to start pruning them. You don't want to excessively prune them. Typically, we say if you're going to have a particular size in mind you want those trees to be, is give yourself 3 years. Maybe take a little bit off this year, a little bit more off the next year, and make it a 3-year project.
What's your definition of a little bit?
What I'm saying is if you want to bring down the height of that tree half of what it is, don't do it all in 1 year.
So a foot?
Do it over 3 years. So it depends on the size of the tree and how much you want to bring it down. But yes, start on it and start working that. Try to open it up. Then do your pruning. That'll help a lot. The challenge with those old trees is if you do get some disease in them, they're really hard to get good coverage to spray them. And so that's a challenge.
Would it be a good idea if there's some sentimental value to those trees to maybe do some grafting on some dwarfing?
You could, and I've done that for people, just go and show them how to graft, and we do have some publications on that, so call your extension office if you don't know how to do that. And that is a good way to basically, keep some of that tree alive, and you can graft that onto even a dwarf tree and keep that particular tree going that way.
All right. Thank you for your call. Unfortunately, I don't think we have time to take these other phone calls. I'm sorry about that. I just want to end with a take-home message from each of you. What would you like to see home gardeners do this year? What practice would you like to see them adopt to have a better growing season this year?
Well, other than be patient, things will green up. I am a beekeeper, and I do like to see the insects flying around. So, as a homeowner, you should walk around your landscape, see if things are flying around. And if you don't see insects moving around, maybe bring in some more flowers, more annuals, perennials, some flowering shrubs.
Can you quickly tell us how honeybees are doing?
It hasn't changed from last year or any previous year. I mean, it's still a mess. I mean, there's the varroa mite. There's some diseases that these varroa mites are moving around. There's pesticide issues. There's a lot of good research going on at Penn State on what's going on with some of the pesticides. So there's a lot of stressors right now with the honeybees, and it's a struggle.
And bumblebees, those seem to be doing okay.
Yeah, bumblebees are doing okay. They don't face as many of the stressors that honeybees are, but some of the things that are affecting honeybees are also playing a role in interfering with some of the bumblebee activity, but they're doing okay.
Okay. John?
Okay. Select good plants. I've got an eggplant here. You can see some of the older leaves, the lower leaves turning yellow a little bit. So when you're looking for plants, try to select ones that all the leaves look good. Get them home and get them planted. The other thing I want to say is make sure that you're planting things at the right time. You know, a lot of times we think, well, tomatoes and peppers are both warm season, they're both related, so we can plant them together. Tomatoes are a lot tougher. Tomatoes can take a little bit of cold weather and they'll grow through that. A pepper will not. You know, once you've damaged or a pepper gets cold, it's not going to respond. It's never going to do as much as it could have.
So what things could you be putting in right now?
They are calling for some cooler weather. So anything like a tomato, pepper like that, I would hold off until it starts to get another warming trend. Once that starts, I would go ahead and put the tomatoes in, eggplant, some of the more hardy things. Something like peppers, I'd probably wait maybe another week. You know, after you put your tomatoes in, give it a week, let the soil continue to warm, and then the peppers will
And of course, your cold weather crops you could have put in already.
They should be growing. Yes,
okay.
They like this weather we're having, and yeah, they're doing well.
All right, thank you both so much, and I'm sorry we didn't get to all of our calls. Our guests tonight have been Tom Butzler, a Penn State Extension horticulture educator, and John Esslinger, a county-based extension educator with Penn State. For resources on tonight's topic, visit our website, wpsu.org/conversationslive. Thank you all for watching and listening. I'm Patty Satalia. For all of us here at WPSU, have a good night.